if you're okay with that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm ready.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we approve the agenda with the one change that the agenda reflect that we'll discuss all line items of the budget with the exception of the school, and then the school budget we will discuss next week at our next work session.
I have a motion. I have a second.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we approve the agenda with the one change
All in
that
favor, aye?
the agenda reflect that we'll discuss all
Mr.
line
Chairman,
items
if
of the budget
the motions
with
and
the
seconds,
exception
if the supervisor
the
could
school,
identify
and then the school
themselves,
budget we
that
will
would help.
discuss
I don't know
next
who
week
made the
at our
second.
next work session.
Supervisor Hash, second.
Thank you.
No, I think I heard all live, so we're good to go.
Great.
Supervisor Revel, do you have your budget?
I have not received it yet.
It should be coming. It should be on its
It's a
way.
lot. Kenneth, that's a lot of information to be pushing down this little shoestring of an internet we have out here in the western end of the county.
My apologies. I almost forgot to share it with you. I've worked on it up to literally till 5 o'clock, so it's hot off the press.
Yep, there it is. Mr. Chairman, I do have it now.
Okay. Good deal. Mr. Shepley, do you want to say anything to start with?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we continue to monitor all of the coronavirus-related activity. One of the things that's happened very intensely over the last 48 hours is a tremendous amount of information on a regional basis and on a state basis to help us try to figure out how to handle the effect on the budget from the coronavirus. And that's really at the essence of what we're going to be talking to you all about, the actions that we've taken, and conceptually how we are recommending that we move forward in a way that preserves the services that we provide, but secures enough of a buffer that we are prepared if things continue to decline in the future. So that's what we'll be focused on as we go into our discussion tonight. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Is everybody comfortable going page by page like we did last time, or anybody have any different ideas?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to hear from Bill and Lisa what their thoughts are about the impact on revenue, particularly, and maybe even expenses, as a result of the coronavirus crisis that we're in. So, to me, that'd be helpful to know the magnitude of what they're thinking before we start talking about the different budget items, I think.
Okay.
Thank you, Supervisor Revels, Chairman Belton. Our plan was to go into this from a perspective that was just described by Tom, and that you may see that the need for going through line by line, certainly we'll be ready to do that, but there's a conceptual change based
revenue that we would have off of the new revenue, the new tax, both personal property, real estate, machine and tools, et cetera.
Gotcha. Can you answer that, Lisa?
For this particular calculation, we took this as worst case, and that's where we've taken from here. And again, this just came in, I think, yesterday or day before. So we did use the 5% just as a worst case. We can play with changing that, the formulas in that particular spreadsheet that came from VACO and extrapolate it down, make it a little bit more true it up, so to speak. Again, he was just using this across the state. Across the state, he just used the numbers that were reported to the ACA.
Yeah, I got it. I mean, it was some good work on their part, and I think the overall shortfall for this FY and next FY came out to 1.5. Your all's proposal is 1.6. But by doing the more realistic application, granted, our payment rate may be a little lower because of the economic conditions of the citizens, but the number that we need to put away may be, 1 million instead of 1.6, and therefore the cuts that we need to apply, or not the cuts per se, but the sequestration funds may be less, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
yes.
Good point.
Yes, and we agree. It would be really I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
I thought I was interrupting someone. I'm sorry. Conceptually, this is worst case scenario conceptually. Hopefully, after the first quarter, and that's maybe the second quarter, maybe this is only 6 months into the next fiscal year, we can start looking back and readjusting the budget. This is just a starting point. I do foresee, and I talked with Treasurer Hall about this again today, the next fiscal year is going to be a very active budget adjustment year. It's going to grow and shrink and grow and shrink. And that's just simply because even the experts don't know where we're going.
Lisa, if you apply your 5% across the board, how does the mandated expenses for salaries or other things impact that number? If the state has mandated something, don't we have to live up to that, and we can't choose to reduce that amount, can we?
You are exactly right.
And so how would that impact that number? What's the magnitude that you might expect?
What I'm thinking is that on the county side and what we have, our expenditures and our what we would put aside for capital projects. Normally we have a fairly large number set aside for transfer into our capital improvement fund. That is already frozen. So that, and zeroed out actually for this fiscal year. That number would only grow if we see that the revenue would come back in. So if there's mandated, if there's state compensation board increases for wages even though those are frozen on the county level, if there's wages are increased on the state level through the compensation board, of course those would be adjusted. And then those departmental budgets adjusted through their discretionary portion of their fund. And
Supervisor Revels, that's something that we were talking about right up to the very moment that we came online with you all. And our original difference between the budget that we're proposing now and the budget from last month was actually $1.8 million. And we reduced that by $200,000 by doing a ballpark figure that would include what you asked about, those mandated salary changes that have to happen, along with a couple of departments that are absolutely necessary to help us through the coronavirus situation that we felt we couldn't cut, such as emergency services. So we've taken out $200,000 in preparation for what you're talking about. So we guesstimate on the high end that will be the impact is $200,000. So it changed us from 1.8 to 1.6.
And we realize this is Mitch. We realize too that some of these departments, as we go through, that they're not going to be able to cut because of state mandates, which was already mentioned, and things like that. That there'll be departments that will not be able to do this.
Well, I'm glad that you took that into consideration, Bill, because I think that makes the number a lot more solid, and I like that. Thank you for doing that, Lisa.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa.
You said a couple departments and only mentioned emergency services. Were there another department?
Yeah, the other one was in Cody Wingate's
Electoral board.
in the electoral board. We didn't think we could. It was the money that he needed has been mandated by the state for security, for voting, and so those were the two that we were thinking of. Did I miss anything, Lisa? Did I leave somebody out?
There are some changes that will affect circuit court clerk's
Oh, yeah,
office
that's right.
as well. And we'll go. We as an administrative team will go through that, and so you'll still see this living, breathing document change as it goes along. But we'll be making those adjustments as we go. What you see here is just really just look at the bottom line for the department, not necessarily line item by line item. That was just the easiest and the quickest way for me to reduce everything by 5% is just by every line item being reduced by 5%. It's not saying that salaries are going to be cut. We're not talking about that at all. Those are protected. Everything currently in place is going to stay in place. As far as wages and employment, we're not looking at any furloughs. We're just being very flexible. Just look at this as, okay, well, this is cut 5% out of salaries. That doesn't mean that you can't move your postage, because it just popped into my head. You can't move your postage to your salary line item. Those are the conversations that we'll have with the department heads to say, this is the number, you spend it where you spend it.
Any more questions?
This is Mike. Is there anything solid from the comp board on the salary adjustments as far as the budget from the state?
Not yet. We're expecting that over the next couple of days, and it may not be from the comp board as of yet. Mr. Shepley and I were fortunate enough to sit through a conference call this morning of local finance, as a local government finance discussion, and both VML and VACO will have some guidance from the state published either tomorrow or Friday. Today, Wednesday?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it is.
So the next couple of days, so that hopefully we'll know something of how the state's budget has been impacted, and then how that will trickle down to the different departments. So we're still waiting. That's still an unknown there.
And Chairman Belton, the session that I've been through about 30 sessions online or on the phone from the federal, state, and regional entities to guide us as to what we need to be doing. The experts are putting it together as we speak, so there isn't a set plan. It's sort of, they're trying to figure it out as we go. But I want to tell the board that the session I sat in on today that was done by Virginia Tech, from my opinion, was the best session that I've sat through. It was the most informative for us on a local level, and I'd be glad to send that information on that meeting out to anyone else that might want to participate. It happens every Wednesday at, what time was it, Lisa? 9 o'clock?
right now it's every Wednesday at 9 o'clock, and there's also a Google Drive drop, kind of like our OneDrive. There's a place where you can go and access what everyone else is doing and resources that are available, and that is open to you guys as a board as well to share the information. There's also a spreadsheet that's ongoing as to what our neighbors and both near and far in Virginia are doing to try to get ahead of the financial impacts of the pandemic.
And it's not just Virginia Tech putting it on, it's Virginia Tech coordinating it, but the people that were the speakers were from, state level. And the one word we heard repeatedly was the need to be flexible, that we were going to have to be flexible. And some counties even were going to a quarterly budget. And so it's a venue in which you can ask questions and get your questions answered by the experts immediately, or at least they can tell you that they'll look into it. So I'd be glad I'll ask Linda to send that out to the board in case anybody wants to join us on that. That was extremely helpful for us in what we're presenting to you today.
For example, this morning we heard from Davenport, and the focus this morning was on bond issues, refinancing, that sort of thing. So the market is favorable to that type of action, but they're very careful to make very general statements because it is specific to each locality and whether that would be good for each locality or not. So it would be nice to have a consensus or direction from the board to acquire services from loan and bond specialists to be able to take a look at the loan that the county owns, and then we can also approach the school and say, hey, can we refinance the other loans that the school actually has in their name?
And so what we would hope would come out of this meeting tonight is that if we have laid out a scenario that the board feels they can support, what we would then do is, starting tomorrow, we would pull in each of our department heads, task them with quickly turning around how they're going to implement reductions that we're talking about, and have that out to you as soon as possible, hopefully within a week. Lisa, would you say?
Well, yes, our next
next Wednesday.
Oh, that's right.
Next Wednesday.
So before a week, we'd have to have it before the week and get it out to you so you could then go through the line items and see what is actually being proposed based on the changes that we described tonight. So the line item by line item changes we're going to put on the department heads to make it happen, because since they're the ones that are dealing with it on a day-to-day basis, but they will be required to meet these reductions that we're talking about, should you all approve this plan.
With the exception, of course, of anything COVID-19 related, any of those expenses, either now or going forward into the end of this issue.
Hey, Bill, John
Mr.
again.
Chairman,
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, John.
I guess my overall comment, I get what your goal is. I get the direction. I think it's prudent. I think from a messaging standpoint, I've never been a big fan of just across the board percentage cuts. And so I think you've already kind of gone into it with the approach that you can't do 5% everywhere. But there might be areas you can do more than 5% because those areas are basically shut down in the county because no one can get together. And so I think the overall goal of a 5% reduction in its spending is good. I just don't like the cut everybody 5% because small budgets get impacted much greater than larger budgets. And so, but I think your approach is sound from what I've heard so far.
And John, we completely agree with what you're saying. I guess we're saying this from a a description, an overall 10,000-foot description, but we may have some groups that, have to have line items cut by 15% or 18%, and others that may need to go up a little bit. So it's not just to clarify, it's not a hardcore 5% across the board on each individual line item. It's going to be, and it may even be that we have one department that is a 1% cut and another that's a 9% cut. So we hear what you're saying completely, and we agree.
Bill, this is Tom. I support the concept. I like the target number. My job is not to manage the county, so you cut where you can cut, and if it's 1%, it's 1. If it's 10%, it's 10. Just come up with the bottom line number, because I believe that, because I honestly think the impact of this virus is going to be greater and longer than most people who are very optimistic are hoping and wishing. So yeah. I think we have to approach this upcoming fiscal year very cautiously until we really get some experience under our belt. So no, yeah. I like what you and Lisa and Mitch are proposing. It's a lot of hard work for you, but I guess that's your job, and I want you to do it and do a good job with it.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that.
And I echo exactly. I'm not going to repeat what Tom said, but I echo that sentiment.
Thank you.
Bill, the other piece that I would see as a separate but certainly related item is the refinancing. I think we ought to move. I think we ought to move quickly to evaluate that, because I tell you, interest rates, particularly for governmental institutions today, it's going to be a long time before they reach low levels like they're at today, and we should take advantage of that.
Yeah, I agree completely, and it is something that I was very interested in what Supervisor Fan had to share with us. We got to quickly get in some financial experts to give us their advice on whether it makes sense for us. But I agree. I think there's a great opportunity to affect this budget for years and years to come.
Mr. Shepley, you and Mr. Belton know exactly what the Crossroads Institute was able to do.
Absolutely.
With the board's consensus, we'll look to acquire a financial advisor that specifies in bonding and refinancing.
You need a motion. I would make it.
I would second it.
Would that be a consensus, or do we need to even vote on
it? It'd be great if we had a vote on it. We would appreciate that.
Okay. So we have a motion.
I third it. I'll support it. Supervisor Hayes.
Well, if I take the fifth or whatever. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Okay. Motion carried.
Bill,
Go ahead, Mr. Evans.
No, I'm sorry, Kenneth. Go ahead if you haven't finished. I apologize.
No, go ahead. I was just
okay.
The motion that they would go on with looking at the financing.
Oh, okay. Bill, we've talked about cutting. Another strategy for revenue that I keep reading about is grant money.
Yep.
There appears to be a lot of part of the recovery plan that the feds have is to push more money into grant, federal and state grant organizations. And you had mentioned in an email recently that we should have someone full-time focused on identifying funds and writing grants. And while we've talked about cutting, I personally think we need to talk about the possibility of hiring a grant writer with some experience, because I think that could be another way to dig ourselves out of the hole as the recovery occurs. And I'd like to know what management thinks about it. I'd like to know what other board members think about that.
Well, Supervisor Revels, thank you for bringing that up. We see that, like, when we got the list from the National Association of Counties of all the grant opportunities that are out there and the deadlines for those grants, it became clear to us that those counties that have grant experienced people are going to be on the front lines receiving those grants, and that we're deficient in that area. And so with us having a vacancy right now, we would love to move forward with bringing somebody on board on contract to be a contracted individual to help us seek out all the COVID-19 related grants that are out there right now. We need to be doing that right now. There are some grants that the deadline for the grants is today. And so we can't have Grayson County miss out because we're a small county. We need it as much, if not more, than the large counties need. So if the board was supportive of that, we would love to. We think that person will return multiples of whatever we pay to have them on contract. And we have the money in this fiscal year to do that, but we've got to get on it right away. Thank you for bringing that up.
Hey, Bill, on that topic, though, what was our experience with Mount Rogers as it related to grant research / writing? Because didn't we pay them like $10,000 or something to do that sort of work for us?
Yeah, we sure did. And I would say that was, they helped us with grants such as Eagle Bottom, and they helped us with the comp plan. I don't think it was what we expected to get from that relationship. And I don't think it can be right now, given that they're pulled off in many other directions. And I think we need to go in a new direction to get better help on grant writing.
Okay.
Well, Bill, in fairness to them, they're serving a lot of masters, and my experience with them thus far has been they pick and choose using their own judgment about what an organization may need and which priority they want to place us in compared to others. I think we need somebody that has one loyalty and one master, and that's our county.
Yep, I agree. And I think the things that they've worked on for us, they've done a great job. So I don't want to give the impression that but you're right. We need somebody focused on taking care of Grayson County. I agree completely.
There's a lot of money that's going to be coming forward if what you read about the federal plans, and we need to have our dog in that fight. We need to be fighting for that money.
Yep, we agree.
You want a motion on that, Bill, or you want just?
Yeah, that would be great. If we could get that, we would appreciate it.
Okay.
Kenneth, I so move, Kenneth.
Ms. Revels has made the motion. To air second.
It's John Fan, I'll second.
Yeah, I heard John. Second. All in favor, aye.
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 Thank you.
That sounds good. You want a motion about the plan for the reduction in the budget amount? 5%?
That would be great. For the concept of, doing all the things that we've described and coming in to you at the next budget meeting with that 5% reduction worked out between the different departments and the management team.
I got one question on that. Is that going to take in the very last page of the money that goes to the, like the chamber and stuff like that? Is that 5% going to affect that too?
In all honesty, we hadn't got that far. But
Kenneth, do you mean the local support? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
That's a good question. Like Lisa said, we haven't gotten that far.
Yeah, I'm of the
Conceptually,
opinion if we can protect the local support and those agencies that we're partnered with to some degree, I think that's money well spent. It's not a big chunk of change, and 5% of 150,000, I think, is roughly what we're doing on local support. That's a budget dust number. And so, if we can, since it's a goal of 5% reduction for next FY, I think we'd be better served to try to protect that local support money.
I think that's especially true in this environment that we're in, where those agencies are providing so much to our folks at very little cost in an emergency situation. So I support what you just said, Supervisor Fan.
And this is Mitch. I would agree with what Mr. Shepley just said. And an example of that is Feeding America. We know what they're doing in 2 locations in Grayson County. And I have put in a call, as you all requested the last meeting. I've not heard from him yet, the president or CEO of Feeding America, for another location in Elk Creek. But that's just one example of that support in that area and what they're doing for us here in Grayson County.
Yeah, I agree on that whole concept. I just want to be clear that it did not include that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, Mr. Shepley, I mean, given these changes, do we think we still want to go through the budget the way it is, or is there? I guess there's value in it, maybe, or is it? Do you need to come back with a reworked budget next week and spend the time doing it?
I think the best use of your time, if the board is in agreement with this, is to let us go back and, I mean, the numbers we have right now are going to be changing as we talk to each department head. So we would prefer to come back into you with what we think is our final recommendation at that next budget meeting, if the board approves that.
I would agree with that, Bill.
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see what it's going to benefit us to go over these numbers when we're sitting here knowing that, you know, that they're not in play anymore.
Right.
Okay.
I feel the need. I'm sorry. I feel the need to apologize for the unknown. But I hope you do each understand that we're really writing history. Every day is a brand new day. So thank you for working with us and being understanding and giving us the flexibility to do what we need to do.
Absolutely.
Lisa, you all work so hard and put in so many hours. Gosh, go for it. Or you take what you need.
Thank you.
Hey, Bill, did the governor, I'd heard that he was reconsidering a lot of the things that the General Assembly passed that he was initially going to support, like the minimum wage and some of the other things, and potentially going to delay those. Did any of that sort of stuff come out, just for our knowledge, as you go into this next week's prep? Has any of that been made final or cleared?
Go ahead, Lisa.
That is what we're waiting on, reports from Virginia Municipal League and the Virginia Association of Companies. Those reports will be due out into the week, first of the week. So once we have those reports, they are the ones combing through what's been frozen, what's still going forward. Once we get those reports, we'll know more.
Okay, so like, for example, the 4% teacher raise that we got to do 2% of, that could get delayed, as an example. The 15% or $15 or the increase in the minimum wage could be delayed, that sort of stuff, correct?
Yes, that is the guidance that we're looking for in the expected report.
Okay, I got it. Thanks.
Another department that we may not be able to decrease is our public works. From everything I'm hearing out and about, that everybody's trash is doubling. So our tipping line item may go up.
That's a very good point as well. Everybody's at home more, so trash is increasing, and that is a department that we have our eye on, a very close eye on that department.
And actually, those folks are real heroes through this situation, because they are, there's no remote working for them, and they're touching things that are touched by every person in Grayson County. So they've taken, tremendous safety measures to stay safe, but they're out there, all day long dealing with exactly the kind of thing all of us are trying to stay away from. So we're so proud of them, and we want to make sure they've got everything they need. But that's a great point, Supervisor Sutherland. We'll have to look into that.
Well, I know I see them, and I wave to them, and every time I see any of them, I thank them, because they're out there.
Yep.
Well, you just think about the people that are eating at home now, or they're going through a drive-through and taking it home, whereas they used to be in the restaurant and they'd leave their trash there. Now they're bringing it home. So trash has increased. Our recycling has decreased, due to our amount of workforce that we have during this COVID-19, what's going on there. And so all of that plays into more trash.
I saw the bins were covered, recycling.
What was that, Supervisor Sutherland?
I said I saw the recycling holes, or everything was covered up.
Yes, due to the way we're doing alternating schedules and all, at this point, we're not taking in the recycling.
Okay, any more comments? Questions? We're looking at you all go through the budget and come back to the next budget session. So I guess we ready to adjourn?
I have one other question, please, Mr. Belton.
Yes, ma'am.
Any of us have any suggestions possibly for a grant writer? Would you like for us to send those names to you?
Absolutely.
Okay. That was my question.
Yeah, good. And Chairman Belton, do you want to, we were going to have a closed session tonight at the end of was it closed? Wasn't a closed session, I'm sorry. We were going to have a discussion regarding emergency services, and we can either do that tonight or next week, depending on what the board's recommendation would be.
We do have Mr. Hoyle here with us in the room.
Well, I would think next budget is going to be a big one. What do you think? We're going to talk about the school too. Maybe we should do that tonight while we're here.
Whatever the board would prefer.
Is this just a more discussion, open public discussion about emergency services? Is that what we're talking about?
Yes, Supervisor Fan.
Actually, talking about the budget.
Well, but the budget, what is it? I guess I'm not clear. If the budget needs to be reviewed like every other area, what is it we need to discuss?
this is actually one of those areas where it would not hold true to the concept that because of the very nature of it and because of what we're trying to do with emergency services in Grayson County. So this would be an outlier or an exception to that rule on this budget, even though we are looking at maybe not as aggressive approach as what we one time were with COVID-19 influence now.
Yeah, I guess there's two things on that particular line item. I think it would be helpful from a administrative standpoint to split out the emergency services coordinators section from the support we give to the agencies, since they're separate and they don't fall under the coordinator. And then the other thought is that after last week's presentation, I really think before we go too much further on the budget, we need to get the agency's take on those recommendations.
But we are talking about
the committee.
Then we could take some time, and Mr. Hoyle could get with the agencies on our concepts and ideas, and between now and next week, and maybe be more prepared then. I will open to his thoughts. He's in the room.
I think we need to have a discussion about exactly what do we mean by that. Are we looking at letters of support from the agency, or are we looking for something coming from the commission? Because we've had the preliminary discussions with the affected agencies already.
My personal opinion is an official position from the agency or from the commission on the future way forward that you're recommending.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
So do you want those in writing as a letters of support or from the commission chair?
I don't really care if it's in a letter or not, but I mean, making sure we have buy-in from the commission on the way forward is, I think, very important as we move in that direction. And I know that there's been discussion individually, but we want to stay true to our commitment to that organization, and we want to make sure that we bring them along. And they may support, they may not support. I don't know, but we need to have that, make sure that they're on board so that we take their views, since they're the ones doing the hard work day in and day out, and they're trying to recruit, retain, and do all the training. I think it's really important that we make sure we have them in the room when we're discussing the future of how we do first responders.
I think we can take what you just said, and Mr. Hoyle can take that and move forward with that idea of making sure that the whole committee is in on the idea and understands the concept, and he can get a consensus hopefully before next week's meeting.
That's just my opinion. I don't know what the other board members think.
John, I concur. This is Tom. I concur that would be a very important step to do. So, Mitch, I would say if you can do that, that would address my concern.
I think that'll be aggressive for him, but hopefully we can. Hopefully he can go to work and meet with some of the leaders of each agency, and I know 2 or 3 of them are already very well aware of the concept, and it'd just be a matter of taking the rest of the commission members and making sure they're up to speed on our approach.
And frankly, I don't know that it needs to be by next week. I mean, we're talking big numbers. We're in April. We'll be at the end of April. We've still got, 60 days before we have to approve our county budget. We don't need to rush this decision because it's pretty important to the future of the county. And so, but I think having their buy-in and their input is vital to making sure that we all stay in the same boat, rowing in the right direction.
I think that flexibility and not having that time constraint, we were talking about for budgetary reasons for y'all to consider next week, but I think if we could have some flexibility in the time constraint and having a little bit more time, knowing we do not have to have this budget finalized in the next few weeks, that would help us come to a good ending, hopefully, on this subject.
Okay, any more suggestions, comments? Okay. Look for a motion to adjourn.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, one alibi. Sorry.
Okay.
Hey, Lisa, is the library brought in on all this? I know from time to time they kind of get forgotten about because they're kind of a odd duck on how they're organized and how things are paid. Are they on board with this discussion and all the things we're considering? Are they included in the department discussion tomorrow, I guess?
They can be included. They would be a one-off. Again, some may cut 9%, some may increase by 5%. So there'll be a one-off. We can have that conversation with the library, but we'll not just assume that everyone can cut.
No, I just want to make sure they're included in the discussion. I'm not defending the budget request or anything. I just want to make sure they're part of the discussion with the department heads, because I don't know what Wood County's thinking about in regards to this, but I just want to make sure that the library's not is also included.
Yes, they will be included. Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. That's all I got.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, before you adjourn, you had mentioned, and Mr. Shepley pointed out to me there that of getting a motion for the 5% reduction concept on the FY21 budget, but it did not move forward. I just wanted you to know that was in the notes.
Okay. I'll look for a motion on that then.
So moved. Second. John Fant.
Okay, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Now, is anything else, Mr. Shepley?
Yes, sir.
Anything else that you need to bring up?
Just thank you for your trust in us, and we will make it happen.
I'm sure you will. Y'all have done a good job. Look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Chairman. The thing is moved in 5 seconds. All right, we'll show adjourn tonight, and the next meeting is April the 20th. Is that correct?
22nd? Is it 20? What date is it, Mitch?
Hold on.
20th.
Next week.
20?
Well, it should be Monday, next Monday.
22nd.
Go ahead, Mitch.
April the 22nd on a Wednesday night. Is that when we say? Is that when it is, or did we say April the 20th?
I have the 20th.
Yeah,
Okay.
the 20th.
Okay, that's a Monday night. So April the 20th, this coming Monday night, will be the next meeting at 5:30.
Can
Okay.
you all get what you got to get done in 3 working days?
It would have been better if it was the 22nd.
Well, we'll make it.
But we'll do it.
I can go the 22nd.
I can do the 22nd.
I can do the 22nd.
Supervisor Hash can do the 22nd.
Okay, I can too. So we're good at everybody. We just move it to the 22nd. Give you a couple more days.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will be adjourned and we'll talk to everybody next Wednesday.
Thank you very much.
All right, bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Be safe.